Hi, have you ever considered how often should you change your chain? I was planning to have a different scenario for this video, but guess what happened? I was riding Trainer line on Majitsi Varial, and I was extremely lucky as the unexpected happened at the start of my line. So how often should you change your chain? It depends, but first things first, and to begin with, let's discuss and understand a little bit better the possible reasons for a chain to fail. The first and most obvious reason is to fail due to overload, which implies that the actual load that applied during the use exceeded the strength limit of the chain. This limit is usually far from the intended load, considering the designed use of each chain. So I'm pretty sure that this is quite improbable to happen, given that you use chains that are tested and used by the majority of the trials community. The second reason is to fail due to normal and expected wear. This happens as the chain links stretch during the use, and you can observe the results of this effect if you compare the actual length of a used chain with the length of a brand new chain. Chain stretch can be observed even after a couple of rides, and it's something completely normal. However, as you continue to use the same chain, the links are stretched more and more, and you have to check periodically if the stretch of the chain is within the recommended values. This check can be done by using relevant chain checkers, which are no-go gauges adjusted to check the pitch of the chain. If the pitch has been changed significantly due to the stretching effect, the chain checker passes into the chain, indicating that the time to change the chain has come. Nevertheless, chain stretching takes time, and I've noticed that sometimes it's not a good indication of your ride trials. So, depending on your riding style, you may have experienced chain snaps before the chain checker indicates that the chain stretch is more than the recommended to ride. This one was actually the case for me at the beginning of this video, so if it was not overload or excessive chain stretch, what was it? The third phenomenon which could lead to a chain snap, and in fact is the most common reason of unexpected and unexplained part failures, is fatigue. I tend to make a specific video to discuss about fatigue and how it works, but a quick definition for the time being is that it's a phenomenon that the material fails due to the repeated loading within the working load capacity of the part. Usually, parts have been designed to eliminate the probability of failure due to fatigue during the intended lifetime. However, if the lifetime was to get defined by the possible fatigue-related failure, the service life would depend on the actual load intensity during the use of the part. So to make this one more straightforward, the harder you ride and the more power moves you do, the sooner the chain will fail due to fatigue. So I've noticed that sometimes this may happen faster than the expected wear of the chain, which is indicated by the amount of stretch. To prove this one, this is the chain of the opening clip of this video, and as you can see, the chain checker doesn't indicate any significant stretch, but unfortunately it failed. So let's get back to the initial question. How often should you change your chain? It depends. The first thing that you should regularly check is the stretch amount of your chain using a chain checker, and if the indication of the stretch gets equal or more than 0.75%, it means that you have to replace your chain. Also, you should regularly check your chain for dents that may have happened due to impacts of the chain with ledges or rocks. In case that you observe any dent on the links, the chain should be replaced, as this dent will act as a stress concentration point and it may lead to the unexpected failure of the chain. However, in the unfortunate case that your chain snaps before it's been stressed significantly and you haven't noticed any dent on the links, it probably is a sign of fatigue. Actually, fatigue cracks are very distinctive and noticeable, but we're going to dive deeper into this topic in a future video. So, if you like such topics, consider subscribing to this channel so as to get notified of future videos. So, once you've decided that the reason of your unexpected chain failure is due to material fatigue, you should estimate the actual service life of this chain, and next time you should consider changing your chain before this happens again. Personally, I try to keep track of the frequency of my training sessions and the type of riding I do, and considering the chain model I use each time, I've estimated the expected service life of the chains I use. So typically for my street trials, I tend to change my chain every 3 months of riding, and for my GC varial I tend to change my chain every 2 months approximately. Generally, I've noticed that street trials riding doesn't load the chain as much as the competition trial does. However, keep in mind that these estimations are based on my riding style, and I usually tend to reassess the estimations as my riding evolves and my technique changes. One trick I do to remember when I change my chain so as to keep track of the day is by creating an Instagram story of the chain replacement process so as to have it documented, and later on I can go back to my stories archive to check the date I changed the chain. If you're into bike trials and bike maintenance, you can follow me on social media where I'm much more active in an almost daily basis. Finally, another tip that I have for you before I close this video has to do with the actual chain replacement process that I follow. I don't want to make this video about the chain replacement process and how to do it, but I think that I have to stress out some key points, especially for you that ride bike trials and street trials. So my main point is that you should not use the quick link to connect your chain. I know that the quick links are designed to supposedly withstand similar load as the main part of the chain, but frankly I don't think so. Thus, I always rejoin the chain using my chain tool by reinserting the pin that was replaced to split the chain. After rejoining the chain, I use two hammers to remove the pin heads and make the chain as good as before it was split. Next, I ensure that the freshly joined links are not stiff and can be rotated freely, and after that, the chain is ride ready. However, I want to be able to keep track if the joint link is as good as I think it is, and so I always use a permanent marker to paint the pin area around the link, and in the unfortunate case that the chain snaps, I always check if this was the link that failed. And as you can see, the snap link of my failed video is not the one I joined using the process I previously mentioned. So let's sum up. Given that the snap chain failed after 2 months of riding, having no significant stretch, and keeping in mind that there were probably no dents on the chain and the joint link is intact, I can safely assume that it failed due to fatigue, and thus the service life of that model of chain, considering my riding style, is at most 2 months. So the next time I use the chain, I will schedule to replace it after 1.5 months so as to introduce a safety factor into my estimation. Finally, closing this video, I believe that the least we could do is to regularly check our chains for regular wear due to stretch and also examine the links for dents. Also, in case you have any unexpected snaps, you should keep track of the service life of each chain model, and in case of possible fatigue, you should schedule the replacement of your next chain before the unexpected happens again. So, I would like to know what's your approach up to now. How often do you replace your chain, and what do you do to check its wear? Also, what do you think about my approach? I'll wait your reactions in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, and in case that you are new to our channel, please consider subscribing and hit the notifications bell so as to get notified every time I upload a new video. Also, if you think that this was helpful, feel free to share it with your friends. Finally, we can always be in touch by following me on social media, and you can find the links to the relevant accounts in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Until then, make sure that your bikes are well maintained.